Hey everybody, Miss Tiff the Lockologist here. In today's video, I'm going to compare two different clients. One that hasn't had his hair done for about 6 months, maybe less, maybe a little less, and one who gets her hair done probably every 6 weeks or so. I just want to show you that there's a difference in how we have to go about the maintenance on different time periods between maintenance. I'm going to play the intro and then we're going to get right into it. Let's go. Okay, so I've used this client for a video before, but I think I just put music over it because it was a really long video and I needed to get it out of my phone. But I'm going to use a clip of it again because I want to actually talk over and explain like what's going on when you put a long time between maintenance. Your hair doesn't like that. Hair in general doesn't like for two different textures to be present. Where two different textures meet is a breaking point. And so what happens is that your hair is growing about a half an inch to an inch every month. And so when you've got about an inch of new growth, the afro hair and the locked hair are two different textures, and they are where they meet at is a point that they'll start to separate. Hairs will start to separate slowly from around the perimeter of the lock, and the more time that passes, the more hairs will separate. When those hairs separate, then they tend to want to lock with other hairs that have separated from other locks surrounding them. And so what you end up getting is the hair trying to lock basically all together into one big thing. And so when people use what I call the neglect method, which is what they freeform or semi-freeform, they're going to constantly have breakage because of the two different textures meeting. This TikTok I made shows the hairs that break and how they break over time, eventually leaving a tiny piece of hair connected to the lock. Because this client has put so much time between his last retwist and this one, it's really hard to figure out where his parts were supposed to be. If I part it the way that the hair is trying to go, most times it leaves for very jagged edged parts. And I know if a client saw my pictures and chose to book with me, it's because they want to see nice clean parts. But the problem with going so far between appointments is I don't know where those parts were supposed to be. And so in order to give you clean parts, I have to do some unorthodox stuff. I have to do some ripping and pulling where I normally wouldn't be ripping and pulling. I sometimes have to cut with a blade to even get there to be any semblance or resemblance of a part. So I'm not making this video to say that you can't put 6 months between all your retwists and that somebody won't be able to get it to look nice again, because I will be able to get it to look somewhat nice again. But this is basically the reason why I really don't take new clients for anything except for starter locks, and why, see that's a blade. I have to cut that hair because otherwise I don't know what kind of part it was trying to make, but it didn't look straight at all. It didn't look like those hairs are trying to go that way at all, so I have to use a blade. But the reason why I won't take new clients for anything but starter locks, and why you won't see a whole lot of wild transformations on this channel, is because I teach people how to prevent this. I teach people how to maintain their locks in such a way that they never have the matting or the weak spots that come from putting so much time between maintenance. I teach preventative maintenance. And the reason why I do that is because these locks might look okay now, and they might be okay for a while. But continuing to do that, or even if he doesn't continue to do that, and this is the only time he puts 6 months in between appointments, there is going to be a weak spot in those locks. When they lock back up, there's going to be a weak spot where all those hairs separated at. And there's a lot of people doing different things to fix it, but ultimately the only thing you can do is either cut it off or wait until it breaks off and then reattach it. But those reattachments are not as permanent as they would lead you guys to believe. They literally pop off eventually, they slide back off, and then you have to reattach them again and again and again. And usually to me, it seems like the hair stops growing after a while. Like when people leave it and neglect it for so long before maintaining it, it seems like it might look like only 4 months of new growth, even though it's been 6 months, because it kind of stopped growing around the 4-month mark. It's like, okay, well, if you're not going to do anything, I'm already feeling hairs breaking and popping and pain, because that freeform stuff and that neglect, when the hairs are stretched and matted with other hairs that are far away from the actual curl, that hurts. It's uncomfortable. And so there's all kinds of trauma that's related to neglecting your hair like that. And so I just wanted to show like there's a difference in how I actually have to go about cleaning up the parts, because when it comes to the client number 2, you're going to see you're not going to see all this ripping. You see all these hairs that are matted together all the way across the top. You're not going to see that. There's going to be still a decent amount of new growth, but it's not going to be so much new growth that it's matted together. And so people say that they like for their hair to look rough, and they like for it to look a little bit thick at the scalp. I get that. It looks like that every 3 weeks if you don't wear a scarf, and 4 to 5 if you do, because you're going to get that new growth. But around 6 weeks, it needs to be done again. If you don't, and you let it go to 8 weeks, it'll start breaking. And if you let it go to 10 weeks, it's going to start breaking some more. And if you let it go to 12 weeks, it's just going to continue to break until your locks are hanging on by a thread. Now, he didn't go that far, thank goodness. And so there's still something to salvage here. But some of those, like the picture that I showed and from my TikTok, those locks were barely hanging on. And the thing is he hadn't done that his whole lock journey, but he did it that one time and it put weak spots. So here's client number 2. And as we can see, I was able to get her hair out of the scrunchie without having to rip or tug anything. And now you can see me cleaning up her parts without having to do anything that looks painful to me or her. Nothing that is not like I'm not struggling to get the hairs to move. The little bit of hairs that are not in the right place is just very few of them. So they haven't had a chance to tangle. And this is at about 6 weeks. Like at about 6 weeks, there's already hairs, tiny hairs starting to separate around the perimeter of the lock. So it makes no sense to let more and more separate until they start to mat together. But as you can see, very easy to clean her parts right there with my finger, not my nail, but just with my finger, just tucking under the hairs and moving them over to the other side. The hair is I don't have to rip anything. I don't have to pull anything. I'm not hurting her. Actually, this is like a 12-year-old girl. And there's no issues. Her parts are easy to find. And nothing is hurting. I don't have to pull. I don't have to cut anything. Oh my God, I don't have to cut. And the parts are very clearly straight, and they're still the same parts from when I started her locks. They're still there, and they've never gotten lost, and so there's never been any need to have to find them. You just reestablish them. And so people often want to tell me that it's my job to separate hair that's matted together. They think that's normal, but I'm sorry. I said my job is to prevent that from happening. I decide what my job is, and my job is to keep people from having weak spots in their locks. My job is to make sure that the lock, the way that it started, the partings that you started with, are the partings that you always have, because you never lose them. My method is to prevent the damage and the tragic, traumatizing journeys where locks are breaking off and popping off and you have to reattach them. I don't want to do that. That is depressing. Hair falling off and I have to band-aid it to pretend like it never fell off. No, I don't want to do that. I want to grow your hair and keep your hair from having any issues. That's it. And so if you would like to do the same for your clients, or if you would like to do the same for your locks, then please subscribe to my channel and like this video if you made it this far. I'm pretty sure this is all I got for the day. I just wanted to make sure that I gave an example of what I'm talking about beforehand, because as you can see, these parts are so much easier to find. And I want that for you. I want your retwist to not be painful. I want your retwist to not end up with weak spots. It's not the retwist's fault. It's the neglect in between time. So I've heard of people saying something about over twisting that makes your hair thin. That's not what makes it thin. Y'all saw that picture from TikTok. Those hairs separate, and that creates weak spots. That creates thinning. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. And I hope this video was helpful to somebody as usual. Share the video with your loctician or a friend or anybody you think might need this information. And I will see you guys on the next one. Have a great day. Bye.